large human skulls, and skeletons that measured between 7 and 8 feet in height, which, for ancient man, would have been rather significant.
The legend of giants, towering humans who once roamed the earth, has long been woven into the tapestry of folklore, religion, and mystery. From biblical accounts of the Nephilim to Native American stories of red-haired warriors, these tales have fascinated and unsettled us in equal measure. Now, reports of giant skeletons unearthed in places like Lovelock, Nevada, and across the American Midwest are stirring the pot once more. Giant discoveries in Lovelock Cave.
The strange thing is that many of the artifacts were huge, like you have giant-sized sandals, like a 15-inch long shoe, which is size 29 US.
In the remote desert landscape near Lovelock, Nevada, miners searching for guano in 1911 stumbled upon something extraordinary. Deep inside a cave, they reportedly found dozens of human skeletons, some measuring between 7 and 8 feet tall. The find was so unusual, it soon became wrapped in the lore of the Paiute people, who told of a tribe of red-haired giants called the Si-Te-Cah. According to their oral traditions, these violent intruders arrived by boat, waged war against the local tribes, and were eventually cornered and exterminated in that very cave. While initial excavations in 1911 and 1912 were focused more on bat dung than anthropology, they unearthed thousands of artifacts alongside human remains. Among the items discovered was a 15-inch sandal, a size that dwarfs even modern basketball legends. For context, NBA great Shaquille O'Neal wears a size 22 shoe, yet the Lovelock sandal would have been a size 29 today. Even more mystifying was a handprint found pressed into stone inside the cave, nearly double the size of a typical human palm. By 1931, the legend gained more fuel when a Nevada newspaper claimed that two mummified skeletons, measuring 8.5 and 10 feet tall respectively, had been found in a nearby dry lake bed. The bodies, reportedly red-haired, mirrored the description of the Si-Te-Cah in tribal stories. Skeptics have pointed out that hair can change color due to environmental exposure, but the correlation was enough to keep the mystery alive. Though many artifacts from Lovelock are housed in museums, there's little physical evidence today that confirms the skeleton's existence. Critics argue the original reports were either exaggerated or fabricated entirely. Still, the overlapping details between oral histories and archaeological claims continue to prompt new investigations and debate. The mound builder myth and settler imagination.
You can find numerous accounts of bones, skeletons, and giant-sized artifacts that have been found in this area.
Long before Lovelock became famous for giants, 19th century Americans were already enthralled by a different giant mystery. As settlers moved westward, they encountered vast earthen mounds across the Mississippi Valley. Rather than attribute these structures to Native Americans, popular writers and amateur historians concocted a story of a lost race of giant white mound builders who were supposedly exterminated by indigenous tribes. These stories helped rationalize colonization by casting Native Americans as destroyers of a more civilized race. Books like Josiah Priest's American Antiquities promoted the idea that a prehistoric race described in Genesis had built these mounds. According to this theory, the so-called mound builders had been both physically larger and more intellectually advanced than the native populations that followed. The implication was that native people could not have constructed the sophisticated earthworks, thus justifying European conquest of the land. Abraham Lincoln even referenced the idea in a speech in 1848, suggesting that extinct giants once gazed upon Niagara Falls. Whether rhetorical flourish or personal belief, such statements helped solidify the idea in the American imagination. Poets and preachers followed suit, blending biblical references with pseudoscientific claims to build a narrative of a lost race of giants that once walked the continent. Throughout the 1800s, hundreds of newspaper articles reported the discovery of giant skeletons ranging from 7 to 20 feet in height, unearthed in burial mounds and fields across the country. Some stories included outlandish details, like skeletons found sitting on thrones, adorned with armor and clutching weapons. Few of these claims were verified, but the sheer volume of reports added a sense of credibility at the time. Despite their widespread popularity, most of these stories were debunked by scientists and archaeologists. Skepticism, Hoaxes, and Smithsonian controversy.
Starting in the mid-1800s in America, archaeologists began excavating skeletons of giants who were 7 to 8 feet tall in many cases.
not everyone bought into the giant narrative. In 1934, Alex Hrdlicka of the Smithsonian Institution led a debunking campaign against these so-called discoveries. He argued that many of the skeletons were simply misidentified remains of large humans or extinct animals like mastodons. Often, he said, amateur anthropologists were fooled by large bones or relied on faulty estimation methods, such as using their own thighs to measure femurs. According to Alice, the Smithsonian regularly received reports of giant bones, sometimes 2 or 3 times a month, but few held up under scrutiny. One particularly telling example involved a skeleton paraded around Tennessee as a 20-foot-tall man. When it reached New Orleans, a medical expert revealed it to be the remains of a mastodon. The exhibit quietly disappeared, but new giant claims continued to crop up. In more recent years, conspiracy theories have developed around the Smithsonian's role in debunking the giants. A viral internet story in 2014 claimed that the institution destroyed thousands of skeletons to cover up their existence. Though this was traced to a satirical website, the idea gained traction among believers. Reuters and the Associated Press thoroughly debunked the claim, yet the suspicion remains widespread among fringe researchers. Even credible discoveries, such as the 1890 find by Georges Vacher de Lapouge in France, have been called into question. Lapouge believed he had found part of a giant human skeleton, but later assessments suggested the bones likely belonged to a cave bear. It was a common issue in the 19th and early 20th century. Without proper anatomical knowledge, even experienced collectors often misclassified animal bones as human. Today, institutions like the Smithsonian have cataloged thousands of Native American skeletons, many from burial mounds. However, the vast majority fall within normal human-size ranges. The occasional outlier, usually around 7 feet tall, can likely be explained by natural variation. Despite this, stories about suppressed evidence and missing bones continue to keep the mystery alive in popular culture. Global legends and modern investigations.
People were fascinated by this idea of a giant race that had lived here previously. And this connects to a lot of biblical belief that tended to be fairly literal back in the day. And the Bible talks about back when there was a race of giants that lived among the earth.
The legend of giants is not confined to the U.S. Myths from around the world feature unusually tall humans, often linked to divine or heroic ancestry. In the Bible, the Nephilim are described as giants born of the union between sons of God and human women. In Norse mythology, the Jotnar were massive beings who lived a world apart from humans. And in ancient Greece, the Titans were said to be the predecessors of the Olympian gods. Similar stories exist in South America, where explorers like Hernán Cortés were reportedly shown massive bones by indigenous people. These bones were said to come from ancient giants defeated by local tribes. More recently, stories of oversized skeletons have emerged from places like Saudi Arabia and India, though fact-checking sites like Snopes have determined many of these to be hoaxes or misidentifications. A 2019 episode of the Travel Channel's Code of the Wild reignited interest in the topic when it featured a supposedly 7-foot-tall skeleton from Ecuador. Indigenous Si-Te-Cah storytellers shared oral traditions about ancient giants, lending cultural weight to the idea. However, a 2024 analysis of the skeleton concluded the individual was no taller than 5'4", and that disarticulation of bones, post-mortem, can often make skeletons appear larger than they were in life. Archaeologist Donald Ball has cataloged numerous 19th century newspaper reports about giant skeletons, but his reviews found little to support the claims upon investigation. In one case, a skeleton claimed to be 9 feet tall was remeasured and found to be under 6 feet. As Ball noted, many of these stories lack credible sources, scientific verification, or even physical evidence. While these reports make for thrilling reading, the absence of concrete proof continues to be the biggest challenge for believers. Still, the global scope of these legends suggests the idea of giants, whether symbolic or literal, resonates deeply across cultures and eras. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you think the legends of giant skeletons have a real historical basis? Let us know in the comments section below.